Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining today's presentation on the psychology of climate adaptation. My name is Hannah, I'm 23 years old and I obtained my master's degree in applied social psychology from the University of Groningen last year. Before that, I studied psychology at the University of Nijmegen as well as the University of Glasgow. My interests include sustainability, climate adaptation, yoga and everything related. I think by now we are all aware that climate change is one of the biggest problems our society is facing at the moment. Only through collective action and adaptation we will be able to avoid severe negative consequences of climate change. However, I was quite surprised to find little research done on the influence of demographic and psychological factors in the context of climate adaptation, as well as little research on people's psychological experience of climate change. It was clear to me that there was a missing consent on what climate adaptation is and how to motivate people to engage in climate adaptation. This led me to my research question. How can municipalities facilitate collaboration with citizens in order to increase collective climate adaptation? I had two main goals for this research. One was more specific, where I wanted to gather data in Padapul, and the other one more general, where I wanted to find communication and engagement strategies for policymakers. I wanted to find motivational and psychological factors, as well as climate adaptive behaviors. We know that climate adaptation is key to dealing with adverse effects of climate change. We need to act as soon as possible, because the climate crisis will escalate faster than we will be able to adapt in the future. In the context of climate change, citizens are often ignored, overlooked from policymakers, and not really included as an active part of their decision-making. However, since climate change is a collective issue, it requires collective adaptation measures to tackle the problem. What did I actually do? So I started with desk research and ended with the climate cafe. In between, I looked at literature, preliminary research, and secondary data. There are three factors that strongly correlate with behavior change and climate adaptation. The first factor is risk perception. Risk perception has been found to correlate strongly and positively to behavioral intentions. Risk perception can be influenced by people's negative experiences with climate hazards, emotions, attitudes, and opinions towards climate change, as well as the subjective amount of threat imposed by climate change. The second factor is social norms. Social norms have been found to be a very influential factor when it comes to motivating people to adapt to climate change. People in the Netherlands, for example, were more likely to adapt to floods if they thought that their neighbors were doing the same. The third and last factor is responsibility. Research has found that people are more likely to engage in climate adaptive behaviors when they feel a strong sense of personal responsibility. On the other hand, people who are not feeling a sense of responsibility might be inhibited to adapt to climate change. To conclude, I wanted to show you today how relevant it is for policymakers to include citizens. With a deeper understanding of people's motivations to engage in climate adaptation, we can collaborate and facilitate action. Thus, we can combat the climate crisis as effectively as possible.